"We don't need old men like you dragging us down," she said, flipping her hair as if dismissing me were a formality. My name is Stanley Rowe. I'm 59 years old and had been the operations manager at Harper Machinery in Indianapolis, Indiana for the past 18 years. Not the kind of man who made speeches or demanded attention in meetings, just the steady hand that kept the gears turning at a company that manufactured industrial equipment for half the factories in the Midwest. I smiled thinly, nodded once, and walked out of Vanessa's office. No arguments, no threats, no dramatics, just cleared out my desk methodically while the younger staff averted their eyes. Some of them had been hired as teenagers, now men and women with families, and I'd trained every single one. But nobody said a word as I packed up almost 2 decades of my life into a cardboard box. Charles Harper built the company with his own hands 43 years ago. Started with a single lathe in his garage, grew it into a $30 million business through grit and a reputation for reliable machinery. He'd handpicked me to run operations when his health began failing. "You're the only one I trust not to cut corners," he'd said. Now his daughter, Vanessa, 28 years old with a business degree and 2 years living in Miami, had decided the company needed modernization and fresh perspectives, code for getting rid of anyone who remembered how things worked before spreadsheets replaced common sense. As I walked to my truck carrying that pathetic box of personal items, I felt a strange calm. Because what Vanessa didn't know, what she hadn't even bothered to check, was that my employment contract had a very specific clause, one Charles himself insisted on to keep me from being poached by competitors, a severance penalty equal to 2 full years' salary if I was terminated without cause. I placed the box in the passenger seat and sat there for a minute, hands resting on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I could see the production floor, equipment I'd maintained myself, systems I'd implemented, people I'd hired, about to learn what happens when institutional knowledge walks out the door. I didn't slam the door, didn't screech out of the lot, just turned the key, put the truck in drive, and headed home to call Harold Preston, a lawyer friend who'd been waiting for an excuse to take on a corporate case this straightforward. I've never been the flashy type, married 29 years to my wife Linda before cancer took her 4 years ago. Raised 2 kids who are both doing well, my son in Denver with an engineering firm, my daughter teaching 3rd grade in Cleveland. My life was built on consistency and reliability, the same approach I brought to Harper Machinery. Charles Harper was more than just a boss. In many ways, he was the father figure I never had. My own dad disappeared when I was 11, leaving my mother to raise 3 boys on a secretary's salary. Charles took a chance on me when I was 41, coming off a layoff from a dying automotive plant with nothing but hands-on experience and a community college degree in mechanical engineering. "Credentials don't build machines," Charles told me in my interview. "Men with sense and skill do." He promoted me to operations manager within 2 years. We weren't the type to go fishing together or hit the bar after work, but there was a respect between us that went beyond the workplace. When Linda got sick, he rearranged my schedule without me even asking so I could take her to every treatment. "Family first, Stanley, always." The first warning sign came about a year ago when Vanessa began showing up at meetings. Fresh out of business school, leather portfolio in hand, trailing a cloud of expensive perfume, talking about synergy and market disruption. I'd catch Charles wincing sometimes at her suggestions, proposals that would have gutted quality control or outsourced components we'd always made in-house. But he never contradicted her publicly, just quietly fixed things afterward. "She needs to learn," he told me one afternoon, leaning against my office doorframe. "Some lessons don't come from books." The second warning was when Charles announced his retirement 3 months ago. "Heart problems," he said, though I suspected it was more about yielding to Vanessa's pressure. He looked defeated when he handed me the updated organization chart with Vanessa's name at the top. "I made her promise to keep the core team intact," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "The experience you all bring is what makes this place work." I just nodded, but something in my gut tightened. The way Charles wouldn't look directly at me, like he knew what was coming but couldn't bring himself to say it. The morning after my termination, I sat at my kitchen table reviewing my contract with Harold when my phone rang. Charles's name lit up the screen. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But 18 years of respect don't vanish overnight. "Stanley," he said, voice rough, I just heard. I'm sorry. Not your fault, I told him. You tried to warn me without saying it, he exhaled. She thinks cost-cutting is a strategy. I told her trimming muscle looks like trimming fat until the machine stalls. I know. I glanced at the clause Harold had highlighted. I'm not calling to fight. Just enforcing what you put in place. That clause? Charles asked. Good. I put it there because you earned it. We were quiet a beat. Then he said, do what you have to do. And Stanley, keep your notes. She's already asking why lead times are slipping. I will. I hesitated. Take care of your health. You too, he said softly, and hung up. Harold slid a folder across my table. She fired you for restructuring, right? No performance documentation, no cause letter? Nothing in writing beyond the exit form, I said. No PIP, no warnings. He nodded. Then we present the clause and a clean record. They'll bluster, they'll try to lowball. But if they take this to court, discovery will expose how operations ran under you versus what's about to happen now. What is about to happen? I asked, though we both knew. He tapped the window toward the direction of the plant. Vendors will miss signals. Preventive maintenance will slip. Scrap rates will climb. Your tribal knowledge, the stuff never written down, was the glue I sipped my coffee and felt that same calm as in the parking lot. Vanessa had won a headline, New Leadership Modernizes Legacy Manufacturer. But she'd ignored the fine print, contracts, people, process, the things that actually keep machines moving. Send the letter, I said. Harold smiled. Already drafted. What the hell happened yesterday? Ask your daughter, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Not angry, just factual. I did. She said you were... He paused, searching for the right words. Resistant to the new direction, said you were undermining her authority with the floor team. I didn't reply. I let the silence stretch between us. Charles knew me better than that. He knew I'd never undermine anyone. You're going to file, aren't you? He finally asked. Already have, I replied. Harold Preston is handling it. Charles exhaled heavily. I told her to look at the contracts. Told her before I stepped down there were protections in place. Another pause. She said she cleaned house yesterday. You, Thomas, Jennifer, anyone over 50. My jaw tightened. Thomas had been head of engineering for 12 years. Jennifer had run the quality lab like it was her own, both irreplaceable in their own ways. Is that the direction you wanted, Charles? Clearing out everyone who built the place with you? You know it's not, he said, his voice tired. But I gave her control. It's hers to run now. I heard voices in the background on his end, one distinctly Vanessa's, sharp and commanding. I've got to go, Charles said quickly. She's... The call ended abruptly. The clause. I set the phone down and stared at my contract spread across the table. Section 12, paragraph 3. In the event of termination without documented cause, as defined in Appendix C, the employee shall be entitled to severance compensation equal to 24 months of current salary. Harold had highlighted it in yellow. It's airtight, he'd told me earlier. They'll either pay or we'll take them to court. And they'll cover my fees, too. I walked to the window, looking out over my backyard. The maple tree Linda and I had planted 26 years ago towered now, taller than the roofline. We'd kept it alive through storms, lightning, and even disease. Patched it, supported it, gave it what it needed to thrive. Something shifted in me then. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about value, about experience, and about respecting the foundation others built before someone new decided to remodel the house. Calls to old friends. Picked up my phone, called Thomas, then Jennifer. By noon, I'd spoken with every veteran employee Vanessa had pushed out. Some were shocked, others furious. All were worried about their futures. Take a breath, I told each of them. Check your contracts. Call Harold. Then I made one more call, to Douglas Clean, owner of Precision Parts across town, a man who'd been trying to hire me away from Harper for years. Still interested in that conversation? I asked. The meeting. 3 days after being fired, I sat across from Vanessa and Harper Machinery's corporate attorney in a downtown office. Harold was beside me, his weathered briefcase open, my contract prominently displayed. "This is ridiculous," Vanessa said, not even glancing at the document. "We're implementing a new direction." That's cause enough. Harold, 67, patient and steady, simply tapped the highlighted clause. Termination without cause, as defined in Appendix C, requires severance equal to 24 months' salary, approximately $320,000 in Mr. Rose's case. The corporate lawyer, Justin, a fresh-faced kid who looked like he'd graduated last week, scanned the contract with growing unease. "Ms. Harper, the definition of cause is very specific. Performance issues, ethical violations, criminal acts." "He was resistant to change," Vanessa cut in, arms crossed. "That's insubordination." "Where's the documentation?" Harold asked calmly. "Written warnings? Performance plans?" Because Appendix C requires a documented pattern, not a single complaint. Justin flipped through a thin folder. Nothing. Vanessa's jaw clenched. "Fine. We'll pay a few months and move on." 24 months, Harold corrected. "As stipulated. That's absurd." "We'll offer 6 months. Take it or leave it." I stayed silent, studying her. In that moment she looked so much like Charles, but while his stubbornness had built something, hers seemed intent on tearing it down. Harold closed his briefcase. "Then we'll proceed with legal action. Discovery should be interesting, especially the simultaneous termination of multiple employees over 50. Justin's eyes widened. He leaned toward Vanessa, whispering urgently. She waved him off. "Before you make threats," she said, turning on me, "you should know we're prepared to fight this. You'll be tied up in court for years, and good luck finding another job at your age." That's when her father appeared in the doorway. I hadn't seen Charles since his retirement party. He looked thinner, paler, but his eyes were sharp. "Vanessa," he said quietly. "A word." "We're in the middle of something, Dad." "Now." His tone left no room for argument. Through the glass wall, I watched them argue, Charles gesturing, Vanessa defensive. When they came back, Vanessa wouldn't look at me. "Justin," Charles said, "prepare the severance agreement, as written in the contract." "Dad, not now." Charles turned to me. "I apologize, Stanley." This isn't how I wanted things to end. I nodded once. Nothing more needed saying. As Harold and I stood, Vanessa blocked my path. "This isn't over. I'll be reviewing vendor relationships. Any company that hires you will lose Harper's business." Charles paled at her words, but stayed silent. I just nodded again, already thinking about my conversation with Douglas, about the partnership offer, and the niche market Harper had ignored for years that Precision Parts was ready to enter. "You're right about one thing," I told her. "It isn't over." The severance hit my account a week later, $320,000 minus taxes, more money than I'd ever had at once. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. It had never been about the money. That afternoon, I met Thomas Baldwin, our former head of engineering, at a roadside diner. The place was nearly empty at 3 o'clock, just us in a back booth, truckers at the counter. "Harold got me a year's severance," he said, stirring his coffee. "Not as good as yours, but better than nothing. They want me to sign an NDA." "5 years?" I asked. He nodded. "Can't talk about proprietary processes. Can't use my own work, basically." He gave a bitter laugh. 40 years in engineering, and suddenly I can't talk about my own designs. "You signing it?" "Don't see much choice." "Got a granddaughter starting college." I slid a card across the table. "Douglas Clean, Precision Parts. He's looking for a consultant, someone who understands hydraulics. No NDA attached." Thomas frowned. "Harper would sue me if I took that." "Not if you're advising on general standards." "Nothing proprietary about that." He pocketed the card slowly. "What's going on, Stanley?" "This isn't like you, stirring the pot." I hadn't told anyone about Douglas yet, but Thomas deserved the truth. We'd worked side by side for over a decade. "I'm partnering with Precision," I said quietly. Douglas is bringing me in to lead a new division, specialized hydraulics, the custom, small batch work Vanessa calls a waste of time. Thomas's eyebrows shot up. The custom work? Charles always said that was Harper's future, and she's gutting it to chase mass production. She thinks she can compete overseas on price, I said. She can't, Thomas replied flatly. Not with labor costs here. I know, so does Charles. Thomas leaned in. Is that why you're telling me this? You think Charles is involved somehow? I shook my head. No, but I had lunch with Jennifer yesterday. She said Vanessa's liquidating equipment. The machines Charles bought last year for the custom division, half of them are already gone. Thomas's eyes widened. That's over $2 million in machinery. At auction prices, maybe 30 cents on the dollar. He leaned back, realization dawning. She's stripping the company, converting assets into cash. I nodded. And guess who's been buying property in Miami? Jesus. Thomas rubbed his face. Does Charles know? I don't think so. He built Harper for legacy, not liquidation. We sat in silence, the weight of it heavy, not just for us, but for the 100+ employees still at Harper, for Charles's life's work. What are you going to do? Thomas asked finally. Build something better, I said simply. Something that respects both the past and the future. With Douglas. Thomas eyed me, skeptical. Douglas is an investor. He's 2 years from retirement, wants to back people who know what they're doing and then step aside. And let me guess, he said slowly, you need an engineer who knows hydraulics. I smiled for the first time in weeks. The position's yours if you want it, once your NDA is narrowed to actual proprietary information, not general knowledge. Thomas studied me. This isn't just business for you, is it? It's personal, I said. About value. About building something that lasts. That's all I've ever wanted, building Cornerstone. 2 months after my firing, I sat in Douglas Clean's office reviewing architectural plans for the new facility. The converted warehouse on the east side of Indianapolis would house Cornerstone Precision, our venture specializing in custom hydraulic components. The name had been Thomas's idea. Build from the corners up, he'd said. That's how you make something that lasts. Douglas, a barrel-chested man with a white beard and sleeves always rolled up, spread supplier contracts across his desk. Machine shops confirmed. They'll deliver the first 5 units next month, and the CNC programmer starts Monday. He gave me a knowing look. Former Harper guy, you recommended him. I nodded. Jason Wright had been at Harper 6 years. Brilliant at modeling, criminally underpaid. Vanessa had gutted his department's budget by 30% while doubling her own salary. He'd quit 2 weeks earlier. How many does that make now? Douglas asked. 7, I replied. Douglas whistled. Harper's bleeding talent fast. People follow leadership, I said. Vanessa isn't providing it. Inside information. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer, still at Harper's lab, but feeding me information quietly. With 3 years left to retirement, she couldn't afford to leave, but she could keep her eyes open. The message was a photo of an internal memo. Production delays, QC failures, 3 major clients threatening to walk. I showed Douglas. He adjusted his glasses. Just as we predicted. The brain drain's already hitting output. I pocketed the phone, not feeling much satisfaction. Harper employed families I'd known for years, people with mortgages, kids in college, parents in nursing homes. Their pain wasn't my goal. We should reach out to Midwest Manufacturing, I said, naming one of Harper's biggest clients. Let them know we'll be operational in 60 days. Douglas nodded. Already set for next week. They're eager to talk. I stood and looked out the window at the warehouse floor, workers installing the first machines, bones of something new, something built on respect for both experience and innovation. Charles's call. My phone rang. Charles Harper's name lit up. I should take this, I told Douglas. He nodded and stepped out. Charles? I answered. Stanley, his voice tired. We need to talk. I'm listening. A heavy sigh. I know about the new company, the Harper people you're hiring. I stayed silent. Nothing illegal. Nothing even unethical. I'm not calling to ask you to stop, Charles continued. I'm asking for help. That caught me off guard. What kind of help? The kind that might save what's left of my company. Vanessa's been selling off assets, cutting corners on quality. The board's worried. So am I. Why tell me this? Because you're the only one who knows every part of the operation. The only one who might see a way forward. And because, his voice cracked slightly, I should have listened when you warned me she wasn't ready. I closed my eyes, thinking of the years we'd built something real together. Hundreds of employees had trusted us to make good decisions. What exactly are you asking, Charles? Come to my house tonight, 7. Bring Thomas if he's willing. The board wants to talk options. Options? Yes, his voice steadied, including leadership change. I looked again at the warehouse floor, at the fragile beginning of something new. I'll be there, I said finally, but I'm not promising anything. Fair enough, relief in his tone. And Stanley, thank you for still taking my calls. 6 months after being fired, I stood at the back of Harper Machinery's conference room. It was the quarterly all-hands meeting. Vanessa sat at the head of the table, flanked by her new executive team, most under 35, all looking nervous. I wasn't scheduled to speak until the end. That had been the board's condition. Let Vanessa present first. She was halfway through, blaming market conditions and outdated inefficiencies for a 37% revenue drop, when she saw me. "What's he doing here?" she demanded, pointing. Charles, sitting quietly among the board, nodded to the chairman. "Vanessa," the chairman said, "the board has reached a decision regarding leadership." Her face drained. "You can't be serious." "Stanley," the chairman turned to me. "Would you like to explain the new arrangement?" I stepped forward with a folder. The same Harold had once prepared for my severance, but with very different contents now. "Harper Machinery is merging with Cornerstone Precision," I said. "The board approved the acquisition this morning." Vanessa laughed sharply. "Absurd. I'm the majority shareholder." "No," Charles said, standing slowly. "You hold 20%. I retained 51. I voted in favor of the merger." I slid the folder across. "Cornerstone absorbs Harper's custom hydraulics. The rest continues under new leadership." "My leadership," Thomas said, entering from the doorway. Vanessa flipped through documents, hands shaking. "This is business," I finished. "Nothing personal." A year later, 1 year after the merger, I stood inside the expanded facility housing both Cornerstone Precision and Harper Custom Hydraulics. Workers moved with purpose, the hum of machines blending into a rhythm I'd missed. Charles joined me on the observation platform, leaning on his cane. His health hadn't improved much, but his spirit had. Watching the company thrive again was the best medicine. "Quarterly numbers are in," he said, handing me a report. "Best in 5 years." I nodded, scanning. Profits up, retention stabilized, 3 new patents filed. "Vanessa called yesterday," Charles said quietly. "From Miami." I raised an eyebrow. "After the merger, she took her settlement and left. Now she's starting a consulting firm. Asked if I'd invest." "Will you?" I asked. Charles shook his head. "Told her to come back to Indianapolis, learn the business from the ground up, the way I did, the way you did." She hung up. But this morning, she called back, asked if the offer still stood. Below us, Jason trained 2 new programmers. Jennifer, in her lab coat, inspected components with sharp precision. Thomas sketched design modifications by hand before transferring them to computer. Experience and innovation working together, not in conflict, but in balance. "You know," Charles said, "when I wrote that severance clause into your contract, I never imagined how it would play out." I smiled. Neither did I. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the company we'd built and rebuilt grow again. Some lessons cost dearly, but the ones that reshape how we see the world, those are always worth the price.